short. This subject actually came to me while I was asleep. Um, I have a very simple definition for a lie, which is a deliberate attempt to deceive and deliberate attempt to deceive is it's just that. It's an attempt to deceive. It's a desire to achieve an objective through coercion, persuasion, deception, uh, direct, duress, etc., etc. So we live in a world where everyone's like, lying's not bad. There's times and situations when lying is acceptable, blah blah blah, etc., etc. Lying is something that children do, and unfortunately it's something that women do as a defensive mechanism most of the time. Lying is not something that men should do because we should have the strength to protect ourselves from threats. So there's really no need for men to lie in general, because we don't really have to, we can physically defend ourselves. Now, in social dynamics and in social situations, there's a capacity to want to be tactful and decent and respectful and honest and kind. And a lot of women feel like being rude and disrespectful falls to the qualification of not being genuine and being disrespectful is a nuance in that area of lying, right? Like, you don't want to tell somebody that they're ugly, but you also shouldn't lie. So if someone asks you, like the classic example, does this dress make me look fat? And the correct response is always supposed to be no, the dress doesn't make you look fat. Even Keita Rose has a video where she's talking about how you should just say whatever he wants to, just tell him whatever he wants to hear. I'm going to explain exactly how to formulate your day-to-day interactions with people in a structured way to where you can not have to heavily rely on lying. And the way I'm going to explain it is, when I was younger, there's two things that I have to communicate before I have to go to work. The first is an experience I had with my father, which shaped. My father told me not to lie. My mother had my stepfather bring me home from a custody visit when I was a child, and my mother told me that if my father asked me if she was in a car, to just tell him that she was laying in the back seat with her head in my lap. Now, my father knew that my mother wasn't in the car because he's not a child, right? So I communicated this to him, and his response to me, which shaped the core person who I am right now today, was he said, don't lie about anything. He said, don't lie about anything that ever happens. Don't lie for your mother. Don't lie for me. And if you ever feel like you have to do something that's going to cause you to have to lie about what it was that you did, you shouldn't do that thing, and don't do that thing, right? So as a child that was given that rule, that became a foundational rule. Did I continue as a child to engage in the act of deceiving and deception and lying? Yes, I did, because it's basically part of human nature. When we're younger and we're trying to protect ourselves, sometimes we feel like the truth is not sufficient to provide sufficient defense against consequences of actions. The second part of that story is Santa Claus, right? And Santa Claus is important because most adults teach their children that Santa is real. I wasn't raised that way. My father and my mother never taught us that Santa Claus is real. We were never taught that a overweight fat man is going to come down the chimney and give us gifts. That was not something that culturally was presented to us. So we was never taught that. But as a thought experiment, I want to address the issue of this idea of you raise children not to lie, but as an adult, you tell kids all year, if you're good, if you behave, then at the end of the year, Santa Claus will come down the chimney or come into the house while you're asleep and use magic to give you presents that you as an adult spend all your working your life hard for and putting energy and investing time into achieving these gifts for these children. And then you not only tell children this, we give them the evidence to support the existence of Santa. And then we don't just give them evidence to support the existence of Santa, we make sure that we shape their perception of reality and of the environment and of the conditions around the validation of the idea of Santa, right? Is this a deliberate attempt to deceive? Are we deliberately attempting to deceive young children into believing that a magical being brought them presents to prove that they were good all year? The answer to that question is yes. We don't want to have to deal with the reality of hard, difficult conversations, but the answer to the question is yes. All year, your parents teach you not to lie, and then at the end of the year, they tell you that if you are good all year, then at the end of the year, Santa will bring you presents as a validation of your goodness. And then this experience that we're going to have for this one day is Santa Claus, right? Now, when a young child is given all this information and goes out into the world and says, hey, I believe in Santa Claus and this is the evidence of Santa Claus, and they communicate that to someone else, is that a lie? Are they lying? The answer is no, because they're not deliberately attempting to deceive someone. They wholeheartedly and strongly believe something, and they're communicating their belief from their ignorance about that subject, right? So this is the nuanced path of understanding how to properly lie, how to properly communicate and shape the reality of the world. When I was asleep, my brain started actually operating and all the cylinders started firing. I realized that effective communication is, in fact, being truthful. The capacity to effectively communicate requires at its foundation adequate honesty and truthfulness. You cannot effectively communicate without also being true and honest. And what I realized is that the adversities and the conflict that I have and have had with women all the goddamn time is a direct consequence of their unwillingness to accept the validity of the things that I say as a value of true. Hi, welcome to the stream, right? When I'm communicating things that are true, and I have people around me that don't want to believe what I'm saying, your inability to believe what I'm saying doesn't dismiss the validity of what I'm saying. And your capacity to believe somebody's falsehoods, if somebody's lying to you and you believe the shit that they're saying, it doesn't change the act of deception to honesty. It's not true because someone says it's true and you believe it. It's not how truth works. Then that's not how falsehoods are translated. That's not how that shit works, right? So this is the correct way to understand the proper mechanism for being honest and genuine and decent and kind and humble and respectful. You do not have to volunteer information. This is the most nuanced aspect of being honest and being kind and being respectful and being decent and being humble. Children are considered childish, and being honest is considered mental illness when you're an adult, because we associate it with a young child running into the house and saying, you're fat, or running up to someone and like, you stink, just blurting stuff out. When I was a kid and my father took us to, um, he took us to Old Country Buffet, I think it was. And when we went in, my stepmother was telling them the ages of everybody so that we could get a discount. And she's like, he's this age, he's this age, he's this age, he's this age. And then I'm like, no, I'm not. That's not my age. My age is this. And she's looking at me like, no, you're this old. And she's like, and I'm like, no, that's not my age. My age is this. And I'm like, communicating to her like, I understand how old I am. Why are you trying to tell me how old I am? I know how old I am. And then she's like, Paul, get your son. And then he comes over and she's like, what's wrong? And she's like, he won't. He's telling him the correct age. And my father's just like, he's the age he says he is. Here's the money, right? Because the goal was to make me younger to pay less money for food at the buffet. But because I wasn't brought in, right, why didn't my father bring me in? Because my father's teaching me don't be a liar, right? So he didn't communicate to me, hey, we're going to engage in this acts of deception with this restaurant, or we're going to tell them an age that is not your age so that you can get in at a cheaper value so we can have this experience that we can't really afford. He didn't bring me in on that, like the Santa Claus thing. So when my stepmother said what she said, I corrected her because I'm always being corrected. I know how old I am, and that's not my age, right? So, that's how that should work. You don't have to volunteer the truth. You don't have to communicate information that is not being asked of you. It's not necessary. And that's the most effective way to protect yourself from social consequences in the world. That's why when you go to church, that's why when you go to court, the judge asks you, is this true? Is that true? Or is this valid? Is that valid? You can abstain. You don't have to lie, you can just abstain. And it's like this world loves to accept the fact that everybody is 100% always lying. And I think that's the reason why I made this video, because the biggest problem with the things that people believe is that we only believe in ourselves. And when you listen to people talk and you listen to the things that they believe and you understand the values that people hold about what they think is true, it's very telling and it's very concerning about who they are as people, right? When you see all the racism and all the bigotry and all the hatred and all of the feminist sexism against the intolerance that they have toward men, when you see all this stuff in the world and you listen to people say things that are genuinely like, why would you even say that? Like the whole debate about what is a woman and the reclassification of females, and then like the Epstein file base and how you got all these high level influencers talking about trying to redefine the definition of what pedophilia is and what makes a child, what makes being attracted to a child actually makes you a pedophile, or what the definition of sexual assault is, or if a girl is 17 and she's really close to her age, is it or is it not illegal? Like all of that stuff is a consequence of the social dynamic of the justification of, if I lie and I don't go to hell immediately, then God says that it's okay and I did the right thing to protect myself, because the vibration of Christians is fucking bullshit. And somebody just has to say it. The vibration of Christians that believe that just because you did some stupid shit and got away with it, you're okay and you're validated because Jesus didn't punish you, is the foundation of why everything is falling fucking apart. There isn't even a need to have complex conversations about bullshit, because it shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't fucking be happening. And the only reason why it's happening is because we think that it's okay, because everything that we do is automatically stamped and approved by the absence of fucking God. The absence of God is not the validation of all of the fucking things. Because with the beginning of the video, when I talked about Santa Claus, that's fucking Jesus. There's no fucking evidence of a Jesus Christ. Jesus, come in the house right fucking now. Open the door, sit on the couch, and defend your position. I'm live streaming. The whole world is listening to this conversation. Come defend your fucking self. Come defend yourself. But laws and regulations and ordinances were put in place to keep me physically out of my daughter's life for 18 fucking years. So now I have to walk around as an actual physical person that physically walked the earth, that had laws and rules and ordinances, and a fucked up ass woman physically stop me from being in my daughter's life. And I get to be treated like I didn't want to be a father. Like I never desired to have that experience for the 18 years that I was fucking physically alive. But all these fucking millions of people on this goddamn planet keep worshiping the same fucking God every goddamn day that isn't physically doing shit. All of the controversy and all of the bullshit and all of the reality of everything that's happening in the world. No one calls God absentee. No one argues the concreteness of the physical absence of an actual entity. The lack of the physical presence of this fucking God. No one questions that shit. No one questions it. But everybody wants to push the agenda of all of the bullshit stereotypes. That's why me and Nessa got into it. Because of the bullshit ass stereotypes. Oh, you're late. You're slow. You're stupid. You're dumb. Like every fucking day. Every goddamn day I have to get up and I have to defend myself against racial stereotypes and racial profiling that I myself am not actually engaged in every day. And I don't understand. Right? So that's why I figured, the biggest conflict is, the reality is, the capacity to effectively communicate is just called being fucking truthful. If you think about it, if you really think about it, effective communication, the term effective communication, and the way that we utilize that term every day in society, effective fucking communication is simply being truthful. The capacity by which someone else doesn't want to receive the information that you're giving them, the capacity by which other people don't want to understand or acknowledge or recognize or be receptive to the information that you're communicating to them from their perspective doesn't diminish your truth. If you're being truthful, that was the other thing. This is the actual experience I had that shaped the perception of my reality of the world when it came to being honest and dishonest. And it made sense when I got older. But when I was a child and it happened, it didn't make any sense. I grew up in a household where I was taught that if you find something, it belongs to you. Came from my father and my stepmother. If you find something, the thing that you found belongs to you. Because if you're walking down the street, how many other people walk past a $20 bill for you to pick it up? So that must mean that the $20 bill that you found, or the $5 bill, or whatever it is that you find, when it's truly lost, belongs to you because you were the one that found it. Someone else didn't find it. You found it. So it must be yours, right? So I came home one day. Well, I was at home one day and I woke up and I come downstairs and there's a $20 bill on the floor next to the kitchen table. So I came downstairs real quick. I ran and grabbed it, snatched it up, went back upstairs. And I went upstairs like a kid, and I thought about all the stuff, because I'm a kid. I don't have the freedom that I need to be able to just do whatever the fuck I want to do. So I immediately went upstairs and thought of all the cool things I could do with this 20. Right? So about an hour, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours passed, and then the realization that finding money in a house is probably not the same idea as finding money outside. Because somebody in the house lost the $20 bill. So the $20 bill that I found has an association with somebody in the house. It could be my father, it could be my stepmother, it could be my brothers, my sisters, it could be one of their friends. Someone close enough to me that's not a stranger probably is the owner of this bill, right? So I took the $20 bill and I went downstairs and I gave it to my father. I said, here, I handed it to him. And I walked away. He's like, oh, where are you going? I was like, I'm going back to my room. He's like, where'd you get that? I said I found it on the floor in the kitchen on the table, next to the table. He's like, PC, don't lie to me. Where did you get that? And I'm like, I found it in the kitchen on the floor under the table. And then he got upset. He really got angry with me. And I wound up getting a whooping for this situation. And I was super confused. For a long fucking time, I was super confused. Like, I don't understand what happened, why it happened, whatever. But I realized in that moment why lying was dangerous. Because the most dangerous lie is the rejection of the truth, right? The main reason why lying is dangerous is because the lack of communicating effectively causes distortions of reality and confusion. My father didn't want to accept the truth of the statement that I made because of what it implied about his son being a thief, right? It was more dangerous for him to believe that I didn't steal from him than it was for him to accept a child that has always been honest and always told the truth. So as a person that has to raise a child, that has the responsibility and obligation to make sure that his son grows up appropriately, I was punished as a thief because I suffered the honesty of it being integrity and giving the money back to my father. Now, the nuance of this is the reason why I hate fucking Ida in the backyard, in the concrete, because Ida was stealing from my father. My stepmother was stealing money from my father. And she put the $20 bill on the floor to convince him that I was the one stealing from him. And even though he knew it wasn't true, he couldn't separate the conditions and the probability that a child would ultimately wind up on the path. The biggest mistake that we make in society when it comes to young children is that we will always be children. There will always exist a condition where a young person will do young shit. Young people will always, almost all the time, engage in young behavior and young patterns of evolution. Young people will always stick their hand in the cookie jar and take a cookie out the cookie jar. What we need to stop doing in society is stop associating basic fucking shit with pathology and let children grow into mature adults. Just because a 2-year-old child can sneak into the kitchen and open up a pack of cookies and eat the whole fucking pack doesn't mean that they're gonna grow up to be Dexter. And I'm not talking about Dexter's Laboratory. Those two don't correlate. You need to give people the chance to progress into who they're going to be instead of looking at people and saying, you are gonna be this, you are gonna be that, you are gonna be this. My father never accused me of stealing from him. He just beat the shit out of me for having money that I wasn't supposed to have. Those are two different nuances when it comes to raising and disciplining. And looking back on it, it was effective. Because he never said, you're a thief, you're a liar, and you're stealing. He just simply, based on the physical evidence at hand, beat the shit out of me. Because he understood. He either is lying and he took this money from me, and my wife is right that he is the one that's been stealing from me, or I'm right, she is the fucking thief and she is the one stealing money from me. But I can't figure out why my son has a $20 bill. I can't correlate that. Because in that moment, there is no room to go to the fucking extreme that a woman would be evil enough to steal money from a man that she is trying to convince that his son is stealing money from him, and then put the money next to the table so that the son will find the $20 bills. Because as long as I have access to the money, the consequences beyond that, it won't matter. It doesn't matter if I get the money back to him. It doesn't matter if I use the money to buy something that I shouldn't have. It won't matter. I'm a kid. So as soon as $20 worth of stuff manifests and he's missing $20, it won't matter. But it gives her free reign to keep doing what she's trying to do. Just gives her keep free reign. And we just live in this world where women are perfect and they never can do wrong, and no amount of what men say about them can diminish the universal standard of us being the worst and the most fucked up, right? So the caveat is, how to lie is to communicate effectively and assume that the people that you're talking to are not going to believe you. That is the most effective way to lie. Always assume that when you communicate truth, that the person you're communicating it to is simply not going to believe it. And if you wanna lie effectively, that is the most effective way to lie. Because people that don't really want to hear truth, they're going to reject it. They're going to reject it. They're going to deny it. They're not going to be interested. This is the reason why my relationships have failed. Because women like being lied to. There is a difference between exaggeration in poetry and the nuance in communication and flat out just speaking falsehoods into existence. There's nuance in that. There are things that we can say and do and correlate that are not deliberate attempts to deceive, right? If you're being romantic with a girl and you're like, yeah, girl, I'll give you the moon. You know that you can't physically give her the moon, and she knows that she can't physically receive the moon. So it doesn't quantify it as a lie. Certain exaggerations don't quantify as a lie because the most important component of a lie is a deliberate attempt to deceive. And if somebody is looking at you and believes that you're going to try to deliberately deceive them, their perception of you doesn't make you a liar. Other people's perception don't make you a liar the same way that other people's perception don't make you truthful. You can lie all fucking day, and the person you're lying to could be wholeheartedly confident, invested, and believing in you, like fucking pastors stand on up on a podium, preaching sermons every Sunday. They're fucking liars. They're exaggerating. They just use scripture to do it. But it doesn't change the validity of your ability to be truthfully invested in what they're saying, right? So that's the nuance of it. Because I really think that one of the things that's holding back my position from making my 2 cents is a solid definition for, because I've already built the axiom for what is a lie, a deliberate attempt to deceive, but I don't have an axiom for what is the truth. It's hard to define an axiom for the truth because it doesn't need an axiom. The truth only needs to be accepted. If someone gives you a lie and you accept it, you've accepted a lie. If someone gives you the truth and you accept it, you've accepted the truth. That's all that's necessary. That's it. In that ignorance and in that stupidity, that's it. That's why it's the foundation of love. You can't experience love in its maximum capacity without being receptive and honest and vulnerable. And it's much easier for men who are physically strong to be vulnerable than it is for women to be vulnerable. That's an unfortunate dynamic of how we're designed, but that's just the way that it works. And true love requires truthfulness. It requires openness. It requires honesty. It requires the reception and the projection of those two things. And being in love means that you're communicating those things at a level that allows you to accept and understand. But if you don't want to be accepting, and if you don't want to be understanding, then you're going to block your own path to your own love. You're going to block your own path to your own honesty. You're going to block your own path to your own happiness. You're going to be in your own fucking way because you want to be right about what somebody might do all the time. It's kind of fucking productive. It's kind of productive we're not cats. We don't have 0.2 milliseconds of reaction time. We can slap snates. We need to be proactive. We need to sit down and think things through ahead of time so that we can have our action plan on how we're going to respond to situations in advance, not in the moment. And that's just the reality. You can't wake up every goddamn day trying to prove that people are lying to you. What do you get when you prove that people are lying to you? What do you get? What do you get? A brownie? Do you get a cookie? You go to work and you prove that your coworker is lying, that they're scheming and they're deceiving. What do you get? How do you gain from that? I don't want any of that shit. I just want to do my fucking job and go home. I want to be able to go out into public, conduct myself in a decent, kind of honest, humble way, and return home safely. That's all I want. I want to be able to operate in an environment that facilitates the things that I want and the things that I need at the legal level. That's what I want. I think that it's perfectly normal to have laws that restrict our ability to do certain things for my protection and for your protection from me. I think that's acceptable. I just do. And I see all of this shit. I see like all these ICE raids and all of this philosophy and well, maybe the officer this or maybe she shouldn't have that or blah. We know that the police murders people in the streets. We just denouncing the probable. How many years did we waste denouncing that the murdering of the African Americans in the street wasn't really murder because the African American doesn't qualify as fucking human? How many years did we spend on that? How many decades? How many children walked in rooms and heard debates about, well, the black guy isn't really a man, and then that kid became a 6-year-old kid, and then that 6-year-old becomes a 26-year-old? How many debates did they hear? How many, like, all of this hate against the Islam and like Islamophobia and all of this hate toward Muslims? Did we freaking forget about September 11th and the Twin Towers collapsing and all of the bullshit acceptable hatred that went toward people that were of Muslim descent just because it was associated with the Taliban? Did we forget? What do you think happens when you teach children about Santa Claus? When you teach children about the boogeyman and they become 16 and then become 26 and then become 36 and then become 46? What the fuck do we think is happening in the world? Like, what do we think is going on? I just want to spit shit. That's what this is. That's what this is. This is me ranting and raving because at the end of the day, the reality of the information is not structured in a way that allows us to make informed decisions. So spitting shit, as you call it, is what needs to happen so that somebody can watch it and be like, oh, okay, what he's saying correlates with what I'm thinking. Because I didn't have Paul Emerson on Facebook communicating the things that I needed to hear when I was younger, and I dealt with a lot of unnecessary bullshit. And I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, in 2 to 4 years, once your brain develops, you're going to come back and be like, oh, that's what he meant. You know why I know that? Because that's what happened with me and my father. That's just how this shit works. This is how it works. Children are not given the information that they need so that when they become adults, they will have the information they need to understand adulthood. And that's just the reality. That's just how shit works. That's how it works. I don't see any reason why anyone should be confused about the state of America if you look back to all of the bullshit, discrimination, and prejudice that was ignored. Caucasians right now in America, the underclass, low-income Caucasians are being treated like every other minority group because the elites have enough money that they don't need them either. They don't need working-class Caucasian Americans anymore. They need working-class Caucasian Americans to have more restricted rights so that they can continue to climb and scale up into the stratosphere of money for the sake of money. And governments are designed to regulate that shit. But we've been taught government regulation is bad. So we didn't allow governments to restrict corporations the way that corporations needed to be restricted. And now that we're feeling the negative effects about it in the future that we wasn't invested in, we want to have an attitude about decisions we made when we were young. And I am putting these videos out so that you young people, 18 to 25, can see the signs and start teaching it to your brothers and sisters and the next generation so that y'all won't keep making the same fucking mistakes that we made. We have global fucking connectivity. We didn't have global connectivity when I was a kid. We have global connectivity. This is the first time in life that you can actually call somebody in China from America. An American citizen can talk to a Chinese citizen about propaganda. We have all this bullshit fucking racism on this planet about the inequality between whites and blacks. But we have Fucking social media. If you really think that you are superior to an African American, all you have to do is go on Facebook, pick a random fucking African American profile, ask them live stream, and have a conversation with that person. That's all you have to do. But it's easier to sit at your fucking computer and invest in your own fucking hate based on what did I just say? Big ass corporations telling you about Santa Claus as an attempt to deceive you so that you won't align yourself with people in the numbers necessary to maximize what it is that you fucking want. What's best for you. Do you really believe that the corporations need all of the things that they've said? You know what corporations need? Corporations need government to stop taking so much fucking money from them. That's what corporations need. Corporations need governments to stop taking so much money from them. They are. They are. See, the biggest conflict, and I'm trying to move away from it, is the idea of black and white. There is no black people, there is no white people. There are Americans, there are Caucasians, there are Asians, there are Hispanics, there's Hindus, there's Muslims, there's Islamic, there's Hawaiians, there's Native Americans, there's Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, Indians. Like that's the way that it works. You have nationalities and you have ethnicities. Ethnicities are things that young children can see and you can't dismiss. A young child can walk up to me and see that I have dark skin and nappy hair. A young child can walk up to a Caucasian and see that they have light skin. These values are values. The same way that I can identify a tree by looking at it is the same way that you can look at a person and see features of that person. You're tall, you're skinny, you're fat, you're big. What has happened is we have associated the idea of these physical features, which are inherited genetically, with the idea of classism, right? So poor whites, go find Tim Wise's videos. Poor whites are poor because the elite whites sell poor whites the idea that you're better than brown people because you're like me, you're white. And I'm standing up here on this platform wealthy because of luck. The wealth that I have is a luck value. And the luck value is a luck value that if you get lucky enough, you can be just as wealthy as I am. But the brown people are not as lucky as we are. So you and I connect based on that. We are both of the same type. So if I'm wealthy and white, then you are also wealthy and white. You just don't have the same luck that I have. So you're better than the brown people because they don't have the luck that we have. That's why they don't have any money. And that's the foundation of racism. Racism is the foundation of it is Europeans decided that the maximum way to make the maximum profit is to not pay your employers. That's the like there's no need to do anything complicated with it. What's the most effective way to maximize profit? If you own a business, what's the most effective way to maximize your profit margin? Don't pay your employees. This is the most effective way in business to maximize your profit margin. How do you convince people to work for you for free? How? How do you convince if the most effective way to maximize profit is to not pay your employees? How do you get your employees to work for you for free? That's racism. Racism in America is not about free working labor. Racism in America is about the idea that African Americans are not qualified to be humans the same way that a horse is not qualified to be human. I can hook a horse to a gear and make it walk in circles for 10 hours to produce profit, and I don't have to pay the horse. I just give the horse some food and some water and a very small space to live in, and I maximize my profit. Now, if I had something as obedient as a horse, but as intelligent as a child, that I can get to do more complex things, then I wouldn't have to pay the human the wage. If the human wasn't aware that it had rights and deserved to be treated a certain kind of way, then I wouldn't have to facilitate that to the human. They would just come here, do the work, do the labor, and I could turn a profit. Slavery. So in America, they took it to the next level. They tried to genetically engineer through husbandry the human into what they define as a nigger. Something a little bit smarter than an animal, but not quite as intelligent as a human being. And it didn't fucking work because the human spirit is not limited in that way. The evolution of man is not limited in such a way that within a few generations you can cause a devaluing of us and create that spectrum, right? So that's the way this thing works. There are no Americans of all sizes and colors. First of all, America, North America, is the land of the Hispanics. When the Europeans came here, there was already city-states here. They just had guns and they were able to run the natives off. That's the reason why there's such a huge issue. Everybody that lives in South America are the rightful owners of the nation of North America, first off. And secondly, the indigenous people of America are the correct, honest people that should be here. And that's just the way that shit works. That's how it always has worked. So, I am an idiot. Well, I am ignorant, and there are things that I understand, and there are things that you don't understand, but I wouldn't say that I'm an idiot. I think that if you watch this video from the very beginning, the answer to your question will be given to you. There is no reason to... What does it benefit to want to be white if it means the rest of the world has to suffer? Just answer that one question. What does it benefit to be white if the rest of the planet has to burn? What does it benefit to stand in a balcony on a castle over a kingdom and all you see is suffering and famine and poverty and death and destruction? What is the goal? What is the fucking goal? White people can be fucking white. If you want to be white and you want to have authority and you want to be empowered, do that shit. Take ownership over the fucking bullshit and fix it. And if you can't fucking fix it, let somebody qualified fix it. Let one of these ethnicities in these other nations, in these other countries that have more qualifications than you to run fucking countries, fix the country. Let them fix that shit. The inequality in America is a direct consequence of Europeans being in a position of authority and power. Absolutely, 100%. They are in a position of authority and power. They are heads of households and they're running the country into the fucking ground. They always have and they always will, because they just want to make maximum profit at minimum expense. And they're trying to violate the laws of thermodynamics in doing so, and it will never fucking work. It will never fucking work. And as long as they keep teaching 16, 17, 18-year-old Caucasian boys and Caucasian girls that what they have is a consequence of luck and it has nothing to do with racism, and one day you too will be lucky enough to be as rich as I am and lord over the rest of the world, we're never going to fix this shit. We're never going to fucking fix this shit. And that is the true foundation of what is happening, whether I am an idiot or not. And it's only when you experience the same level of inequality to people around you that you think you're superior to happens to you that you want to realize the problem of the world. It's only when a Caucasian woman gets shot in the fucking face that we think that police brutality is a problem. But it should always have been a fucking problem. It should always have been an issue that the checks and balances of society wasn't fucking working when Africans were being murdered in the street after the Civil Rights Movement. We gave y'all a fucking pass up until that point, but 40 years after that shit, 60 years after that shit, every day y'all like, get over racism. Now we got ICE running through the fucking streets. We said this shit would happen. We literally said that this was a micro escalation of the things that we were describing, and y'all said, get over it. Get over it. And you know what we did? We got the fuck over it. The average African American got the fuck over it. And now the system is engaged in the same tactic it has always been engaged in. They cannot justify their illegal activities and their illegal criminal infrastructure if you do not engage in the same patterns of behavior that they need from us so that they can do the things that they're trying to do. ICE was already on script to murder somebody. It was always part of the script to murder somebody. And because African Americans said, we're not going to go out there and march with you guys, there was no African Americans present, and the numbers needed to shoot and kill one of us accidentally so that there could be an outcry and a riot. They couldn't justify that shit the way they needed it to. They couldn't spin the scenario the way that they wanted. And that's the whole foundational justification for why I made this video. But I gotta get ready for it. So, as always, my name is Paul Emerson, and I was giving you my 2 cents.